Hello once again to another episode of Next Drift. What I thought we would touch on in this episode is the bucktail and matching the correct weight of your bucktail with the depth and the drift speed that you're fishing. Um, I really like the S&S John Skinner bucktails. I like the swing hook. It's a really well-made bucktail. You certainly don't need to have a ton of them, but if you're fishing in the right places on those really rocky bottoms, you're going to lose them. So that's why I carry quite a few of them. But let's get into what the high-low rig and the bucktail is. So this is a high-low rig. You have your dropper loop at the bottom with your bucktail attached to it, and then about 8 to 10 inches up, maybe 12 inches, depending on what you like, you have another dropper loop with a teaser. And that's on about a 3-foot leader to a barrel swivel up at the top where you would attach your braid. You would tip the bucktail or the teaser with, we prefer gulp. Matching the correct size of the bucktail, and I carry a lot of 3, 4, and 5 ounce bucktails when we go out to Montauk and Block Island. And I'm constantly changing. And what you really want to shoot for when you're fishing the high-low rig is to match the size of the bucktail with the drift speed. And as you can see in this picture here, the reason that you want to do that is because you want to try to keep that high-low rig as vertical as possible. That gives you the best feel, it gives you the best bottom contact, and it also allows you to work the rig correctly. And, keeping it straight up and down is, it can be the difference between catching fish and not catching fish. It can be the difference between catching fluke or, getting a lot of sea robins or sea bass. Because if you don't keep that high-low rig vertical, it has a tendency to, if you're scoping out too far, the rig will flatten out, and that changes how that whole rig looks in the water, and it will be more appealing to fish other than fluke. So let's get into exactly what we're talking about, and we'll show you some graphics. So this is exactly what you want to see. You have the current coming from left to right. Your high-low rig is straight up and down. You have good contact with the bottom. You can feel everything that's going on down there. And the presentation that you're able to impart on the rig is going to be the most appealing to fluke. You're going to have that good rapid jigging motion. You'll know what the bottom composition is. Are you going from sand to a hard, rockier bottom? You'll be able to feel all of that the more you're able to keep the rig vertical. So here you have the next case, and this is where your line starts scoping out. The current's moving faster than the rig, you start pulling the rig rather than keeping it nice and vertical. So scoping out's not the worst thing. Sometimes there's no way around it, but usually if my line starts scoping out, now I'm thinking about, okay, it's time to go up in weight, change the weight of the bucktail. Maybe you can even do something going from a 6-inch gulp grub down to a 5-inch gulp grub because there's less drag. Or the other alternative is this is where I start thinking about putting out the drift sock, or really getting the boat to slow down. If you have a trolling motor, even better. You can put the engine in reverse. That also will start slowing you down to keep your rig more vertical. But usually, once I start scoping out like this, it's getting close to time to change weights. And here we just have too much scope. the current's moving too fast, and you just don't have enough weight on. And what ends up happening is you're essentially trolling the high-low rig. As I had mentioned, it starts to flatten out. The more scope you have, the more angle that there is, and when you're trying to do your jigging motion, you're more or less pulling the rig forward and backward than you are straight up and down. So when this starts happening, it's definitely time to change weights. You may have to put out the drift sock. You may have to put the engines in reverse if you have a trolling motor, like I had mentioned. This is the time to use it. Or it's time to maybe relocate. Head a little bit closer into shore. Find that spot where the tide is not as strong. Remember, you want to keep your high-low rig as vertical, straight up and down as possible. If you're dragging that thing, you're just not going to feel the bottom. You're not going to feel bites as well. The presentation is not going to be as optimal as it could be. And also, when this starts happening, this is when you start getting a lot of sea robins, sea bass biting off your tails, because now the entire rig is further off the bottom. It's higher up in the water column, and those sea robins and porgy and sea bass, are much more active in that higher water column. Not to say Fluke won't come off the bottom, because they certainly will. They'll come 10 or 12 feet off the bottom. Last year we had actually had a Fluke come up about, we were at about 62 feet, and we had a Fluke actually come up and hit the bait about 30 to 31 feet up off the bottom. You could see it on the screen. It was amazing. But anyway, but that's how you're going to save your gulp and catch more Fluke. So, keep that high-low rig as straight up and down as possible. It's an ongoing battle all day long. That's why I have so many bucktails. That's why I have so many weights. This is when I start going up to the 6 ounce, which I don't necessarily like to do, but you have to. Or just maybe even pulling the teaser off and going straight bucktail. Or this is another case where I might look at going to another option instead of a bucktail, something that, like a palmer head, that doesn't have a skirt or the actual bucktail itself, because it'll have less drag. So, but anytime you have this much scope, you're wasting your time. You're just missing out on so many things. You're blowing right over the top of the Fluke. So, do what you have to do to fight to keep your rig straight up and down. That's the most important thing. So that's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you want to use the lightest bucktail you possibly can. You have much more feel. The heavier you go with a bucktail, the less sensitivity you have. But just remember, pay attention to the angle of your line. Anything more than 30 or 40% angle is probably getting to be too much. But experiment, and you have to take in the depth, you have to take in the drift speed, all that good stuff, and that's what dictates the weight of your bucktail. So I hope this helps some people, and as always, please like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you again soon. We'll be on the water real shortly.